Here's a question that's been keeping me up at night. If a machine can now write essays, solve equations, and code better than most adults, what exactly are we preparing our kids for? Because the honest answer is, nobody really knows. But there's a neuroscientist at KAIST, one of the top science universities in the world, who says he does know. His name is Professor Jae-Seung Jeong, and he studies how the human brain actually learns. And he's issued a pretty stark warning to parents. He says there's one specific skill that matters just as much as a reading, writing, and maths. And if your child doesn't develop it, they will hit a wall later. Not maybe. Will. It's not coding. It's not a second language. It's not even creativity exactly. It's something quieter than that. Something most of us were never taught ourselves. And once you understand what it is, you start noticing where it's missing. In your kids, in your coworkers, honestly, in yourself. So let's talk about it. Okay, before we get into the how, Professor Jeong wants parents to reset something more basic first. He says most of us assume the goal of raising a bright kid is getting them into a good university. He pushes back hard on that. The actual goal of education, he argues, was never the acceptance letter. It's raising someone who can contribute to society and stand on their own 2 feet. And here's why that distinction matters right now. The old model of schooling was basically memorize the knowledge, reproduce it fastest, get the grade. That's the whole game we built for decades. But AI now does exactly that. Better, cheaper, and faster than any student ever could. So what does society actually need from young people now? Professor Jeong's answer: something AI cannot supply. Their own perspective, real lived experience. And human skills, cooperation, working through conflict with another person, reading a room. That's the shift. And this is where metacognition comes in. Not as the finish line, but as the tool that gets a kid there. Because in an era where AI can do most of the technical work, the kids who thrive won't be the ones who memorize the most. They'll be the ones who can look at themselves honestly and know what they actually understand and what they don't. That skill has a name: metacognition. It literally means thinking about your own thinking. In his words, the ability to observe yourself from the outside, almost like an alien studying a human. Sounds abstract, right? But it's incredibly practical. A child with metacognition can say, I thought I knew this chapter, but when I tried to explain it out loud, I couldn't. A child without it just keeps highlighting the textbook and feels vaguely confused about why the test went badly. Here's the bridge for us as parents. In the old world, you could power through school on sheer memorization. Enough repetition, decent grades, done. But AI has now flattened that entire skill. What a machine can memorize, your child no longer needs to. What AI cannot do, yet, is know what it doesn't know. That gap, that self-awareness, is where humans still win. And Professor Jeong is basically saying, this is the muscle you have to start building in childhood. Because if they hit their teens without it, catching up gets really hard. Now here's the part that made me sit up. Professor Jeong warns that children who never develop this capacity will absolutely hit a limit later. Not because they aren't smart, but because they can't correct course. And he doesn't just mean the struggling kids. This is his clearest warning, and it's aimed at the opposite end. He says the students who get into Korea's most prestigious universities, the ones every parent points to as proof they did it right, are now some of the ones struggling the most. Why? Because they were raised to execute instructions perfectly, told what to study, when, how, and they did it flawlessly. But nobody ever asked them what they actually wanted. So the moment parents and schools stop telling them what to do, university, first job, real life, they don't know what to do with themselves. They look around at what everyone else is doing and blindly follow. They're excellent at, tell me what to do, and I'll do it perfectly. They've just never had to ask themselves the question underneath that. What do I actually want? That's metacognition's absence, showing up at the very top of the academic ladder, not just the bottom. What tends to happen is this. In primary school, everything looks fine. Grades are okay. The child seems bright. Then somewhere around the tween years, the material gets abstract. Algebra, essays, science that requires actual reasoning. And suddenly the wheels come off. Parents panic. Tutors get hired. But the real issue isn't the maths. It's that the child never learned to monitor their own understanding or their own wants. Here's the honest bit. Most of us weren't taught this either. We were taught to get the right answer, not to notice when our own thinking was off, and definitely not to ask what we wanted underneath it all. So if this feels foreign to you as a parent, that's normal. You're not behind. You're just noticing something your own education skipped. So how do you actually build this in a child? Professor Jeong uses a beautiful image for it. He talks about looking at yourself the way an alien would look at a human, with curiosity, without judgment, just observing. That framing matters, because if you ask a kid, "What are you bad at?" they get defensive. Nobody likes feeling exposed. But if you ask, if an alien watched you do your homework today, what would they notice? Suddenly it's a game. They can be honest. They might say, "The alien would notice I got distracted every time my phone buzzed." Or, "The alien would see I skipped the hard problems." That's metacognition. Live. In practice, this looks like small, low-stakes conversations. After they finish something, ask, "What was hard? What did you actually understand?" versus "What did you just kind of nod along to? What would you do differently next time?" Notice. You're not correcting them. You're teaching them to notice themselves. Professor Jeong emphasizes curiosity and creativity as the engines that keep this going. A child who sees themselves objectively and stays curious about their own mind is essentially self-updating software. And that, in the AI era, is the whole ballgame. Here's where a lot of parents get it slightly wrong, and I've been guilty of this too. We treat curiosity like a personality trait. Some kids have it, some don't. Professor Jeong pushes back on that. He treats curiosity as a trainable habit, one that's tightly linked to how the brain forms new connections. The practical version for us: protect the questions. When your 5-year-old asks why the sky is blue for the 14th time that week, the temptation is to say, "Just because," and keep unloading the dishwasher. I get it. But every time a question gets shut down, a tiny bit of that muscle atrophies. You don't have to know the answer. You can say, I actually don't know. What do you think?" That single sentence does two things at once. It validates the question and it hands the thinking back to them. That's metacognition training, disguised as a casual chat. Now, here's where Professor Jeong says something that might surprise you, especially if you're anxious about the AI race. He actually recommends avoiding AI tools at young ages. Not embracing them early, avoiding them. So if you've been worrying that your child is falling behind because they're not using ChatGPT for homework yet, he wants you to let that worry go. That's not the gap that matters. What young children actually need is hands-on experience, touching, building, getting things wrong with their own hands, not a screen doing it for them. They need to form their own opinions out loud before an algorithm hands them a polished one. And they need to keep doing things AI simply cannot do: noticing, wondering, being curious about their own mind. One more thing he's clear about: your child's worth is not tied to how well they perform in school. Not the grade, not the ranking, not whether they're ahead. Curiosity doesn't grow in a kid who feels like their value is on the line every time they don't know something. Let's ground this, because raise a metacognitive child sounds like a lot on a Wednesday night when everyone's tired. It's actually smaller than you think. 3 things, that's it. First, narrate your own thinking out loud. When you're deciding something, what to cook, how to handle a work problem, say the messy middle part out loud in front of your kid. I'm not sure if this will work, but I'm going to try it because you're modeling the internal voice they need to build. Second, ask reflection questions instead of performance questions. Instead of, did you get a good grade? Try, what surprised you today? Or what did you get wrong and what did you learn from it? Getting things wrong has to be safe in your house or none of this works. Third, resist the urge to rescue. When your child is stuck, wait a beat longer than feels comfortable. Struggle is where metacognition is actually built. If you jump in with the answer every time, they never get to practice noticing their own confusion. Professor Jeong's core message is really this. In a world where AI handles the answers, our job as parents shifts. We're not raising kids to know things. We're raising kids who know themselves, how they think when they're stuck, and how to move. If any of this landed for you, even one small piece, do me a favor and hit subscribe. This channel is for parents who want the science without the panic. And honestly, the algorithm only shows us to more of you if you tap that button. I genuinely love to hear from you in the comments too. Here's my question. What's one moment recently where your child surprised you by noticing something about themselves? Even something tiny. I read them all, and the best ones usually turn into future videos. And speaking of what's next, I want to look at the flip side of caring. There's a child psychologist, Professor Sunmi Cho, who argues the most capable kids often come from parents who practiced a little strategic indifference. The line between being authoritative and being authoritarian, and why caring a little less, in the right way, can raise a more confident kid. That one's coming soon. Until then, go easy on yourself this week. You're doing better than you think.